Hi, this is Dan Bullard, retired electronics engineer, out on the front deck of my houseboat again. It's a cold November morning, and if you look out there, all the leaves are blown off, almost all the leaves. So they won't be back until April. Oh well. I want to talk about M and N, okay? When you sample a waveform coherently, when you attempt to do coherently, you're going to sample N samples over M cycles of the wave. And most people know, who have done this kind of thing, that M needs to be an integer. But just as importantly, they'll tell you that M must be prime. And so, because FFTs require 2 to the power of some number of samples, so 2 to the, let's say 2 to the 10. 2 to the 10 is 1024. That was a common one back in the olden days. But any power of 2, because the FFT works more efficiently with a power of 2. So any prime number will work. Well, I've had so many people tell me this, and it's like complete horseshit. Okay? Now, I cover this in my 45-minute video, aliasing, and you can go back and look. I did it years ago, and it took me 4 months to make that 45-minute video. It's like, ugh, terrible. But it's got like 34,000 views. But you can save yourself 45 minutes maybe and check this out. And you can read my article, Should M be Prime? And that would save you a bunch of trouble. Should M be Prime is also an article or an appendix in my book, Harmonics. And so if you're willing to pay the money, you can get the article, but you can just go to LinkedIn or go to my website, www.danbullard.com/dan/DSP. Boom, it's there. So you don't have to pay any money to find this out. So watch the video, read the article on LinkedIn, read my article on my webpage, or just go and buy the friggin' book, whatever. But I have so many good stories about this. Now, I start this article out talking about a case where I was working for NextTest, selling mixed signal testers, and we had this customer who had to come in at 7 o'clock in the morning for a demo. I mean, the front doors of the building didn't even open until 8. And so I had to be there early, my boss had to be there early, everybody had to be there early to catch this customer because he was going to go to work at 9, so we only had 2 hours to be in this meeting to maybe get sold this tester. And this guy, you know, he was a nice guy, very impressed with what I was doing. He was very impressed. And he started joking with my boss right in front of me, right in front of him, that he wanted to hire me. Okay? Now, I was already making over 6 figures at the time, and he actually went out of his way to give me like a 50% raise. So then this guy is saying, I bet I could pay more money than you're paying, Dan. And he was very impressed with me. And then we got to the point of, I did my demo with an M of 21 and an N of like 4096 or something. N has to be a power of 2 just to make the FFT efficient. Doesn't have to be. There's a Chirp Z FFT that will work, but for the most efficient FFT, N should be a power of 2. So power of 2, like 4096, and an M of 21, he said you can't do that because that's not prime. M is not prime. M of 21 means that 3 times 7 is 21. That's not going to work. M has to be prime. And I've heard this throughout my career. M has to be prime. That is such horseshit. If somebody tells you that, beat them up. Not seriously, but you know, they're wrong. They're wrong. M does not have to be prime. Okay? Now, the word prime does come up in that, but I have relatives who learned in, I think in junior high. They know about mutually prime. M and N have to be mutually prime. not prime. M doesn't have to be prime. It has to be mutually prime with n. And because of that, and because n is almost always a power of 2, then any number that's odd will do the trick. Any number. Any number. So 21 is just fine. But too many people believe this. Now, I won't tell you the company I was working for, but one of the companies I was working for, they claimed that n had to be prime, and they were experts in mixed signals. So they were experts. They should have known that wasn't true, but they believed that n had to be prime. And in their software, they had a thing that said m has to be prime. Well, I convinced this guy, gave him a copy of my 45-minute video because he was flying back to Europe, and I said, watch the video, and at the end, tell me if you still think m needs to be prime. He got back and he said, okay, you're right, m doesn't need to be prime. I said, okay, what are you going to do about your software? And they didn't do anything. So, m does not need to be prime. And how do I know that? The big problem with m being not prime is that harmonics of the fundamental may show up in the same place as another harmonic. So like the fifth harmonic might show up in this third harmonic position, or the seventh harmonic might show up in the second harmonic position, or whatever. Well, it turns out that's not true at all. If you watch the 45-minute video, you'll find that that's not true. And so in this case, I'm going to show you an m with m of 20. With an m of 20, I do this little thing here and show you where all the harmonics are going to fall. So with an m of 20, the fundamental will show up in bin 20, and the second harmonic will show up in bin 4 or 40. Now, since I'm using an n of 32, bin 40 doesn't exist, or at least you can't see it. And so it won't show up in bin 40. So then I use Dan's rules, which is a big part of that 45-minute video that I told you about. 40 translates into a bin of bin 8. And bin 8 is a problem because the sixth harmonic is also in bin 8. So the sixth harmonic is in bin 8 and the second harmonic is in bin 8. That's not going to work because they might be out of phase. You don't know. It just depends on what's going on, the kind of distortion that happens. So that would be bad, and that's pretty obviously a problem. An m of 20 with an n of 32 just isn't going to work. Because the third harmonic, where will the third harmonic be? That goes into bin 60. It's 3 times 20, right? So bin 60, but bin 60 doesn't exist, or at least you can't see it. And so that'll alias, using Dan's rules, Dan's aliasing rules, that'll alias back to bin 4. But bin 4 is also the where the fifth harmonic would go. So the third harmonic will go into bin 4, and the fifth harmonic will go into bin 4. That's a problem. Because again, the third and the fifth harmonic are not necessarily in the same phase. Remember that the phases will only exist in one of 4 flavors: 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, or 270 degrees, if there's really distortion going on. And so you don't know, will the fifth harmonic be at the 270 degrees while the third harmonic is in 90 degrees? Then they're out of phase and they'll just cancel each other out. So you can't have that. But let's take one that's not prime. And the specific one there is an m of 21. So with an m of 21, that is an interesting one because it's not prime. If m is 21, so the fundamental shows up in bin 21, and because 21 doesn't exist with an n of 32, it'll alias back into bin 11. The second harmonic will be in bin 42, but you can't see bin 42 either. So it'll alias back down to bin 10, but not bin 11. And the third harmonic will show up in bin 63, 63, you can't see that either, but it'll alias back into bin 1. And the fourth harmonic will show up in bin 84, which you can't see, but it will alias back to bin 12. And nowhere, all the way up to the 16th harmonic, because that's as high as you can possibly go, the 16th harmonic, there are no repeats. No repeats. All harmonics have their own place to go. Now, beyond that, that's a problem, because you only had an N of 32. But I use an N of 32 just to make this a simple example, not as a usable kind of thing that you might use in some test. But it's always true. It always works this way. So these Dan's aliasing rules, they're really simple. And when I say that millions of times a day my code runs, that's what I'm talking about. Dan's rules. I was one time teaching a class, and I had two brand new engineers, software engineers, in the class, and I mentioned that Dan's rules, and I mentioned that the current system software didn't look at aliases when they did the signals to noise measurements and the FFTs and all that stuff. And so during a break, the two software guys came up to me and said, hey, you know, we're in a position to rewrite some of the software. We could fix that if you like. And I said, yeah, that would be great. And they said, can we have permission to use Dan's rules in the software? And I said, absolutely. And so they did. So in that system software for Credence, and now I think everybody does it, Dan's aliasing rules runs on that software. So anytime anybody does a signal to noise measurement or anything like that on a Credence machine or any other machine, next test machine, any other machine, they use Dan's aliasing rules. And that's done millions of times a day. That's my code, my discovery. And I can tell you how that happened, but it was really cool. I was getting a lecture from a guy, and he was explaining about how aliases work, and nobody knew how they worked. And I thought about it, and I came up with Dan's aliasing rules. And it's really cool. You can read the art. There's lots of articles out there on Dan's aliasing rules, and this one covers it somewhat too. But M does not need to be prime. If someone tells you M needs to be prime, don't beat them up. But challenge them. M does not need to be prime. There's no reason for M to be prime. None. Now, when N is a power of 2, M can be any odd number. That's just the way it is. You can use any odd number and you will never have a conflict, ever. Don't listen to anybody who says M has to be prime, okay? That's complete horseshit. Anyway, this is Dan Bullard from the river.